All right, everybody. Hey, I'm Jeff Livingston with Cognitive Path, and I'm here with Jeffrey Young, the Solutions Consulting Manager at Adobe Government. How are you, sir?
Great. Thank you for having us here.
Very good. And also Steve Lewis, the Digital Media Solutions Consultant at Adobe Government. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
We're doing very well. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement here.
Excellent. And are you enjoying the fine autumn look of DC and peak foliage? It's gorgeous, huh?
DC's beautiful, especially getting out to the Virginia Blue Ridge. That's where we like to be.
Oh, for sure, man. It's gorgeous. So, look, obviously Adobe is one of the leading companies in AI. You guys were out there early. You have one of the most ethical models that were deployed early with Firefly. Really impressed with the stuff that you've done. Let's talk about what you're doing here and generally what Adobe has done to establish and adhere to an ethical framework with the AI.
Yeah, I think that's why we really like to go to events like this, especially that are focused around government, because that's actually where Adobe built its ethical AI framework from. They took a page out of the Founding Fathers when they were establishing the Constitution. So they said, hey, we're going to create a framework. We're going to create it as kind of like a republic where we say, this is who's going to be part of our committee to say, these are our rules, these are the guidelines that we have. Here are ways to both amend it as well as to defend it. We have an ethical review board, and we have representation both from HR, legal, finance, as well as the engineers, as well as the end users, to make it a part of how we are going to make decisions, and makes decisions very easy, so that way the executive branch, the engineers, have the playground that they can play in and know the guidelines that are going to guide it.
That's outstanding. And in my past, I've been a photographer, and
excellent.
I've done pretty well with it, so I obviously appreciate you guys a little more than the average Joe.
Lightroom or Photoshop?
Both, of course.
There it is. Very good.
So with that in mind, I mean, obviously intellectual property concerns, copyright concerns are massive. You guys are creating models at the forefront of creative. So how do you go about building models to protect intellectual property?
Yeah. So obviously, as a creative company, we want to protect the creators. And we've been doing this, and especially in government's done a very good job over the last 2 decades with PDFs. They've been protecting and certifying their PDFs before going out, putting a tamper-proof PKI seal, using digital signatures in order to do so. So that's what's been kind of the impetus of what started this Content Authenticity Initiative. That part of the C2PA, which has 10 governing companies part of the board, and then we have over 3,500 part of the CAI initiative. And what this does is it puts the, at the time of creation or the time of capture, the credentials on there. And then any modifications or the provenance for that, you're able to see what has changed, when it changed, and why it changed over time, all the way out to the publishing. And so you're starting to see more and more websites and social media put this watermark icon on there that's like a nutrition label that you click on it and say, I want to inspect further. Where did this originate? What changes were made? Just so it's about transparency, as well as giving credit to the originators of that, but also combating things like content forgery that is going out there. So this is going to take all of us to be a part of this to make sure that this we have the expectation to see this watermark. We also have the expectation to apply that into our workflows.
So because I know a little more than the average Joe, I'm going to just do a little quick follow-up and ask you to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit with that one. Yeah. Because obviously a lot of people know what a watermark is, but this goes further, right? My understanding is that there's digital information with each file that goes beyond what's visibly seen that people can detect when they, or I should say, content publishers and interested parties can detect when they choose to. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's probably 3 elements to this Content Authenticity Initiative. The first one out of the gates that you probably got to see a lot more of, where you would sign the metadata. So the metadata is on there, and you'll be able to write and update and add to that metadata. The second leg in the stool to be able to, because you can strip metadata, even sign metadata, you can strip that, and there's reasons why to do it for privacy. So is also adding the forensic type of watermark into the images on those visuals as well as video. This is not just only images now, so it's also documents as well as audio.
Sure.
And so having a invisible watermark that carries this information, so that way if you're able to take a picture of something and then you can run it through this inspection tool, you're able to know. As well as having a similarity search, because you might be able to crop out that invisible watermark that's on there. So there's a lot of elements, but it's about a shift, actually. So those are all help for defensive, but we're looking at images all the time and saying, is this fake? We're looking at saying with our own eyes to see if this is fake. What we're saying now is flip that question to say, is this real? And we're going to provide you, and everyone wants to contribute to assuring that this is real. So if you are capturing, if you're editing, and if you're publishing, you want this on there to say this is real. And maybe then you start going with the assumption that unless I see this is fake, or it's going to take a further analysis.
Outstanding. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So moving forward, obviously we have a lot of govies here. I mean, it's a huge government conference. And with that in mind, can you guys tell us what you're seeing in the federal space, the state, local space? How's government looking to work with Adobe and AI in general?
I'll have Steve take that initially.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, absolutely. Especially speaking from where I sit. So when I'm not working at Adobe, I'm a reservist. I'm an Air Force reservist. I've been in the Air Force for 22 years now. Came in as a photographer, photojournalist, and now public affairs officer. And and I've also spent some time in the federal space as a GS level federal employee, working for the FBI most recently, where I was running teams that were producing content for FBI.gov and the social media platforms that the FBI managed. And I will say, from that perspective, there's a lot of redundant work. I mean, and it's all important, critical work, but a lot of really resource-heavy work that has to be done on a daily basis. Whether that's transcribing video to put on social media, or developing graphics and things like that. And where we're seeing issues is where we don't have the correct resources in those seats to do that job, especially the skilled graphic designer. We don't have a large team. Some Air Force wings have one person doing social media, press releases, you name it. So that's where generative AI capabilities come into play now, and that's where these federal offices are looking now to adopt AI, especially in content creation. So we hear a lot about democratizing creativity, where now generative AI brings creativity to people who may not have that skill set at all, that now can create a graphic under pressure and to meet demand, that they no longer have to revolve around a graphic designer, and it frees that individual up to do really important work. So I think there's a lot with generative AI to bring creativity to the masses in the federal space and allow them to respond to public demand very quickly by creating those graphics very easily with the help of generative AI. So that's where it's headed right now across the federal space with DoD and DOJ, where I've been.
And I probably got two more just to add to it, which we've seen is really interesting, is a lot of times in this creative process that you start out with things like a script. And it's hard for people to understand. We're a very visual culture, and that's what their ultimate output is. So when you're saying, here's what it could be, now you're able to use Gen AI to do the storyboarding versus the hand sketching, but also using the videos to create those sub-clips that you may have only been reliant on B-roll to do in the past. And then the other one that we really like seeing is, especially in government, where there's been a lot of historical archive data that's been, for good reason, a document of record stored in digital filing cabinets versus kind of how we would do it 30 years ago. But still, NARA has those requirements, which is great to say at this point in time. But it's not really activated. So now we can have the history inform using AI tools to extract the structure out of that document and be able to ask questions, synthesizing that with current data as well as all historical evidence. So it's really nice to activate some of these long-term storage PDFs.
That's pretty cool. Steve, you and I were trading emails before the show, and we were talking about the generative AI hype cycle, right, which obviously began roughly 2 years ago with the zeitgeist that became known as ChatGPT, right? And obviously a lot of the generative AI hype was about individual apps, productivity, these chatbots, that kind of thing. But what we've seen really is an evolution that's kind of come down to the enterprise and to large organizations to adopt AI, whether that's with creatives like Coca-Cola and their entire enterprise, or now with government. But it's different with these large organizations, these large enterprises. They have different needs, right? They can't just start an account. They have privacy concerns. They have security concerns. They have to worry
about terms of service.
Yeah, they have terms of service. They have to worry about their taxpayers and what's this going to do to our mission. Can you talk about some of the complexities that you're dealing with and how you're helping your federal and your state and your local partners get through those?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I was really excited to come onto Adobe, especially with the Adobe public sector. So, Jeffrey, who's, for those of you watching, Jeffrey's my boss. And he recruited me. And one of the things I asked him, I said, look, I need to still help the public sector. Like, I want to come to industry, but I want to be able to come to industry to expand my support to the public sector larger than when I was already doing at the FBI, larger than when I was already doing at the Air Force. And what I mean by that is being on the industry side, I'm able to then bring all the information I'm gathering from there back over to the public sector to help them make informed decisions. So when it comes to, for example, when the Air Force has already started to leverage artificial intelligence with the Nipper GPT, which basically uses Chat GPT inside of the Air Force portal, where you can use that to help formulate your performance evaluation bullets or help formulate documents and things like that within their portal. The Army has something similar, right? So what I'm trying to do from my level is then, as we're looking at bringing on AI capabilities for content creation, I want to go back and educate the Air Force on all of the different things to watch out for when it comes to ethics, right? Like how do we procure an ethical solution to create content? How can we be transparent to the public and let them know we used AI to create this content? This is the technology I'm using. I'm putting this in the caption. I'm putting the label on there. So seeing things like that and educating them more so then they can make informed decisions on what to actually bring in to use. And I think number two, too, is that AI has been around for a long time. It's been around at Adobe for over a decade. We've already had artificial intelligence. We've had machine learning. We've had all these capabilities. It's just, become such a tabletop topic now, but it's been around, right? So, that's where I like Adobe, is because we have sort of these resources from a trusted organization, from a trusted corporation that's already provided AI solutions. Now we're just expanding that out with things like Firefly, with things like the Acrobat AI Assistant, because AI is a part of everything now. It's been a part of Alexa, Siri, it's in your car, like all these things. It's a part of our daily lives. Now, how can we embrace it in a safe and ethical way and use it to our advantage, especially when it comes to informing the public?
And one part that we get is kind of a joy in this solution consultant role and getting folks like Steve to be a part of Adobe is that we operate kind of like an ambassador, that we are fully embedded into what our customers are doing, have a good understanding of their needs, their missions, and what needs to happen. And then we're also able to bring that back to our engineers and our AI folks and say, this is how this use case, this is how this is going to make sense, and this is where you're going to be able to contribute to this great mission. And so that passion kind of goes both ways for us, and it's an honor to be able to carry that hat on both sides.
All right, that's really cool. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a softball just to end. I'm asking everybody this. What is the Adobe app that anybody can use today that's going to really wow them, to surprise them?
So even before coming over to Adobe, when I was at the FBI, one of the things that we had an issue with was like trying to be consistent with our brand, making sure that all of the field offices who manage social media accounts, when they were putting together the graphics and things like that, all had a similar sort of brand, right? So the FBI logo needed to be a certain way or seal, the colors, the fonts. And so, there really wasn't a good solution out there that kept us all consistent, but also just easy to use, because some of the people using this were like public affairs officers who may not have had graphic design experience. So one of the things that I found, and again, this is way before Adobe, I started thinking about coming to work for Adobe, was Adobe Express. Adobe Express is one of those easy drag and drop web-based, so you can access it from your Google Chrome phone. You don't need to install anything. Well, you can if you want the mobile app, but you can access it from a Chrome browser. And at the Bureau, I was starting to use it where I was on the ground responding to a really critical situation, and with my phone, I was able to create a quote graphic from a special agent in charge speaking about a very critical situation, and then giving that to a field office that was then on their X account or Twitter account at the time, and then you'd see it on CNN later that day or Fox or whatever news thing, and that was all with Express, all with my phone. I didn't have a computer. So that to me is one of these great tools to have for a wide variety of skill sets to keep consistent, keep on brand, being able to put stuff on the fly, but also now powered by generative AI with Firefly.
I thought the story was you weren't on the ground, that you were actually rock climbing.
Oh, yeah,
during
actually,
that,
no, that was,
you were,
yeah,
you
I
were
was
Mission Impossible.
I was
doing
rock
it.
climbing. Yeah, I didn't want to like totally.
Yeah,
yes,
he wanted to drop that.
Yeah, I was like,
for those folks out there, that's what he was doing.
Yes.
And I'm glad you're actually asking everybody. Is it what Adobe application? Just good. Would be great. On a similar note.
Sorry, I topped you. What are you going to say? You're not going to say Express as I said Express.
I can't say Express, but
Yeah.
I'm going to say because we are all storytellers. Whether internally we have to tell the story of what this mission value is, as well as to the citizens, and as we're engaged. So what I like is where video and Adobe Premiere and what we have coming very soon in terms of storyboarding this information is now you're able to generate what people are desiring is a video display. Documents and white papers, those are a little bit harder. People are not wanting time. They want to see the full, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth probably 2 billion words. And being able to create and construct a story with video, and then if you need to go out and capture more to that, you can, but you can construct dialogue. Everything can be done within the video, and I think that's really powerful for us to do to get that information out quicker.
Can I add one quick thing? So, I know we're starting to wrap up here, but if people want to see this in action that are attending today, Jeffrey and I are going to be giving a very lightning round demonstration for like 15 minutes on the demo stage, which at 2 p.m. today, where we're going to showcase using a very federal public sector focused use case, where we're going to run through all of this very quickly so you can see how easy it is to publish and put out content literally in real time.
That's awesome. I'll just say my favorite Adobe app is definitely still Photoshop, but with the generative fill. Yeah, this thing is filthy. It's knocked 15 minutes out of my workflow.
Filthy good.
Filthy good.
Okay.
Filthy, like NBA filthy good. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Very good, gentlemen. Jeffrey, Steve, thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. That was a pleasure.